Ooh, look at that.
Yeah, and so as I'm talking, you're going to see some images on the screen.
Is there
cardamom?
No, there's pepper. There's pepper.
All these spices are the ones that are in there. It's going to show a little bit about cocoa farming, show farmers out there in the field, fermentation, different things I'm going to talk about, drying, things like that. So if you don't know, cacao, which is really the starting block of chocolate, grows along the equator between the latitudes of about 20 degrees north of the equator. Cacao is a fruit, and you can see the farmers out there actually harvesting the pods. They're about the same size and shape. It's a fruit, but it's a fruit that actually grows on the lower branches and the trunks of the tree. And inside each pod, there's between 25 and 40 beans. It takes a lot of beans to make chocolate, by the way, too. But what farmers have always done with the beans is they literally scoop those beans out of the pods. Now, if you look at those beans, you notice that they're covered with this sweet, sugary pulp. And you can see in some of the images there, the real beans with the real pulp on them. Now you may say, well, what good is that? The pulp actually has a significant role in helping to flavor the beans when they ferment, which is the first step in field processing. And the second thing is the beans need to be
That's what I
dried.
tasted.
Beans then, after they've been dried, still today, all done in the field, the beans are then shipped to wherever they're going to be roasted. Now, why is that important? Because roasting actually sets up the final flavor of the chocolate, right? So if you think about early American chocolate making and chocolate making before we started using machinery in the late 1800s, it was an art, right? In order to make my chocolate, I had to know when I roasted the beans, when the beans are properly roasted. Under roasted, I don't get all the flavor out of the beans that I want. Over roasting can give me notes of burn, too extreme flavors.
Notes of burn.
So again, chocolate makers really roast their beans in their pans. And by the way, everything here you can touch
Those are
and
real
smell.
beans?
These are
Right
real
there.
beans, yeah.
They look like almonds, big almonds.
Yeah.
You can buy them on Amazon. If you want
Oh.
to buy cocoa beans.
How good are they eaten raw? Probably not very good.
That's wrong.
Just eat it.
But that you can
I don't think I'm gonna do that.
you don't want to eat them.
I do, but I don't want to ruin your demonstration. I mean, if you tell me I can eat it, I will 100%.
Here's a bag that I haven't touched inside here because I poured them out. If you want to force them in your hand and just take them with you,
Thank you.
you can take a couple later and see what you think of them. You just know that they haven't been touched by human hands.
So have
Well, now that
they,
one's real good.
but they're not sweet then, right?
There we go. Thank you.
Take a couple. If anybody else wants a cocoa,
God,
That one.
poor thing.
boy, that doesn't look that hard, does it really?
Where'd it go?
I clearly didn't help.
If they haven't, so these haven't even roasted, so they're probably just like.
So they don't have the maximum flavor. If anybody else,
I just want one, and I'm gonna eat it right in front of you.
I also am gonna do that.
you can do whatever you want. So if you're
They're
interested,
cocoa beans.
Cocoa beans? Could I try one? I never actually tried the cocoa beans.
Actually, they're good.
it's not roasted.
I'm into it.
Again, this is the idea. Sorry, I'm trying to get it out there without touching the beans.
I can definitely taste the chocolate.
Yeah.
So
You
again,
should really have one.
I have already had one. I've experienced the flavor of it.
so
Weirdo.
in early American chocolate making, after the beans were roasted, they would have been put in a basket like this called a winnowing basket. If you haven't seen these, they're really quite pretty and they come in all shapes and sizes. They're still used today in certain areas of the world. And really, chocolate makers throw the beans up in the air like this. I only dropped one bean so far.
You're doing better than me.
And what the idea is to break this little thin shell off of the beans, right? So again, winnowing, like you see with grains or anything else, is the art of literally separating
The germ from the.
exactly right. And what we want is that center, and that's the nib, right? So the nib is what I want. The bean.
Nib.
Yep.
So when we ate one of the raw ones, did we eat the nib and the shell?
Yes.
Probably. But it's not bad.
That means yes.
But it's not bad for you at all.
Good fiber.
Matter of fact, these are actually pretty pliable. When you roast them, it's actually going to get a little bit more brittle. So this doesn't add anything to the chocolate making.
Just dries it a little.
Yeah, I mean, it protects the bean, right? And when, again, in theory, if it goes into the ground and when it starts germinating, the shell falls off. Now, those shells were never wasted, by the way. They're still not today. So in the old days, they would take the winnowing basket, they would go out into the field, right, and they would literally winnow, and the little shells would fly off into the gardens. And they wouldn't be wasted to be repurposed as a mulch or fertilizer.
Yeah.
Like pine needles.
Now, today we actually still do that. So at Mars, we actually repurpose those beans to farmers. We roast all of our beans in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, and a lot of those shells actually go to the mushroom plants in Pennsylvania.
Oh,
so
yeah.
they tend to really like those beans too.
Because then they stack them or something, like the mushrooms and stuff. Right.
So after the beans were winnowed, they would have been, again, these are all roasted, ready to go. And you know cocoa nibs, right? Have you used cocoa nibs? Yeah. So again, people, I have great stories from people about how they used them. How have you used them?
I just grind them up and use them. Sorry.
Freaking work with Care International? I just saw the video.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah.
So you just use them?
I just use them for like to make my own like drinking chocolate mix and bake with it and stuff like that.
Wonderful. I've heard people say they put them with yogurt, like a yogurt parfait. I've had somebody say they put them on a green salad, just to add some different flavors. Adding it to chili.
Yeah.
Get that chocolate flavor in the chili. So in early chocolate making, they take their nibs and they put them on a heated stone like this called a metate. Now metates are still used in the world today. If you wonder why I'm using a rubber glove, this is why. Because my hand will smell like this all day long.
How terrible would that be?
It's not bad, but
And it's not got the sugar in it yet, right?
nope.
Just
So
pure
again,
chocolate.
this should be hotter. Than
Oh, I just got a whiff of it. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I think
Yeah.
I just felt the heat.
Yeah.
So this is just nothing but roasted cocoa nibs that I've literally blended in here. And it'll turn into a nice, beautiful liquid.
So you haven't put
Wow.
anything with it.
See there? Nope, just nibs.
Really?
And you
So
can
there's a lot
smell.
of oil in this cell.
So why is that shine on it?
Well, it's cocoa. It's cocoa. I don't want to call it oil, but it's no. It is oil. It's cocoa oil.
It is cocoa fat. So from a cocoa bean, there are two parts to this. There's the cocoa solids, we know as cocoa powder, and cocoa butter.
Yeah, and that actually what makes hot chocolate taste good when you make it properly.
Very good, God bless you. So, one more. There it goes. Beautiful, good. My daughter sneezes and breathes. So, what we learned in chocolate making was that if we try to make chocolate with just everything in that bean, it's too dense. Right? That cocoa butter is really thick. So we couldn't really make that into a nice edible piece of solid chocolate. It's just going to be too thick. It's going to be too hard to break. So in 1828, the Dutch chocolate maker, Conrad van Houten, decided to press out the cocoa butter from the bean. So he made a cocoa press which literally squishes the bean down and expresses out the cocoa butter.
Nice.
So 50% of this bean are cocoa solids, 50% is butter.
Wow.
It's too much. So
Wow.
what we're left with when we express out the cocoa butter is a cocoa cake of solid powder. And then chocolate makers literally blend their cocoa butter back in to make their chocolate. But back in early American chocolate making, we didn't eat our chocolate. We drank our chocolate. Very good.
Yeah.
So chocolate makers would literally just grind their cocoa nibs into a nice liquid paste, and you can see the paste forming there, and again the color from the butter. They would take different spices and seasoning, which today you can experience in American heritage chocolate, right? So you get 7 different spices in there too. All of these are in there. They would take the spices, blend them on the metate, scrape them into molds, and they'd be left with a solid block of chocolate. Now, again, this is actually pretty wise when you think about it in early American history, even world history, because there's no dairy in this, there's no nuts in this. What good is that?
I mean,
Butter?
yeah, it's
Doesn't-
just pure chocolate.
Doesn't go bad, it's less likely to go
portable?
rancid. It will go bad eventually. But if you're in a world where there's no refrigeration,
Yeah.
or where you're riding around in your horse or your carriage, you throw this in your rucksack, you could ride around, and whenever you want a delicious cup of chocolate, you literally just grate it into a powder, and you have a nice powder that you can make into your chocolate beverage. Right? And what they would do is, if you're on the frontier, is they would carry a pot with them, or if you were a little fancier, you had one of these things. Do you have one of these?
No, it's too fancy.
Too fancy? A chocolate pot, right?
Oh, I see one of those.
Yes. And if you look at our big book here, you actually see there's a bunch of pictures of chocolate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tony.
I know
He
it's a
would know what
chocolate
that
pot
was.
for a couple of reasons. Number one, I've got this cool top. It's got a hole in it. That's to hold this thing called a
Stirrer. Churn.
well, yes.
I'm done.
That's right. Thank you. At least you tried. A Molineo. You were so close. See that? So this is a Molineo. You can buy these on Amazon too. Literally, they're still used today in Central, South America, Mexico. They're whisks. You know, a lot of time I'll be doing a chocolate talk about chocolate, and people say, yes, my mother has one, my aunt, my grandmother. Again, still used in the world. And I need your help. One of somebody. I want you to do that. I want you to go ahead and give it a good turn like I did. And what you're simulating is what happens inside a chocolate pot. So inside a chocolate pot, what they're trying to do is literally not only dissolve and blend your chocolate. Right, there we go.
So you does it foam up like that?
And you're trying to get a good froth on your chocolate. Exactly what you're simulating. So the mark of a good chocolate maker was how good a froth you could put on your chocolate. But if you pour that from just any old pot, what are you going to get?
Nothing.
Soap water.
A cup of froth.
Oh.
A cup of froth because it's all going to be on the top.
Oh,
So
so
another mark of a chocolate pot.
Is the spot spout down at the bottom?
Yes,
down the
spout
bottom.
down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay? And also you've got the handle on the side, which you find in coffee pots in the area
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
To keep it off your hand from burning when it's on the heat. Right, so this pot's going to go right on the heat, and now I won't burn my
Were they
hand.
usually copper?
No, they were all over. And then remember, all of your settings in early America, so 1700s, reflected your status too. So if you were somebody of name, you would want probably a silver service, right?
But then the copper is antibacterial too, so it would be better if you had a copper thing so you wouldn't get bacteria.
Especially if you were out on the range or someplace where. But again, if you were somebody
So
of
they were made
means,
out of what?
you have
Stainless?
everything washed for you clean. Probably
I think you said
a meal
silver.
too. Your plates or your settings too. And again, you can see the variety in there too.
Did you say those were made out of silver normally? Yeah.
Sure.
So if they were making chocolate, they were using silver
Yeah.
to make those
Oh,
because they didn't have.
oh, they would have been serving. Serving because again, your table setting was a reflection of your status.
So your serving was the chocolate, but your making was the copper?
No. Just they made them out of different metals, right? So they used non-precious metals. They
To cook.
They could have used other, also pottery. So you could have just used just a clay chocolate pots. I've actually got some myself that I had a potter
terracotta?
recreate. Not terracotta, just regular old whatever the clay was that was available in the area.
In that area, probably.
Yep. So they would just throw pots with a spout to the side. Now, you don't have to have a hole in the top, so a lot of those pots wouldn't have a hole in the
Oh
top.
no. Yeah.
But again, still designed specifically for serving chocolate.
I'll
Now,
explain it. But
Pretty cool.
one of the things, and you can see, there's pictures, and these are educators' guides, by the way. They're free. You're welcome to take one with you if you like to go.
Okay. Yeah.
They're
Were they over
designed.
I'll see one.
Okay, I'll get you one. in a
1 second. Thank you.
Otherwise, I have nothing to show. But again, these are actually designed for school-age children. But again, you'll find there's a lot of information that might be fun to learn. You can see down at Colonial Williamsburg examples of people making chocolate. So it could have been copper. Depends on what metals they had available to them at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Chocolate was often served as part of the meal, in particular breakfast. Very true stories
my
in
kind of
American history.
This makes
George,
complete sense.
George Washington and Martha Washington. If you go down to Mount Vernon,
Yes, been there.
you've been there, they have a book down there called Dining with the Washingtons.
Yep.
And there's a recipe in there for something called a chocolate cream. the Washingtons would often make a chocolate cream and serve it for breakfast, especially to their guests. In here
Is
too.
it a drink?
A drink, yes, a breakfast drink specifically. Now think about it, if you were in early America, 16, 17, even 1800s, you would need something substantial to last throughout the day, right? So again, a cup of chocolate in the morning stayed with you much longer than a cup of tea or coffee. Well, those were by far more highly consumed because they were cheaper, right? But if you wanted something that was going to stay with you, you would have something like a chocolate. Thomas Jefferson, when he was Secretary of State over in France, was taken on an archaeological dig. And they took him to a Roman archaeological dig, and he saw this vase there. It's called an Ascos vase. It means wineskin.
It's a shoe.
Shoe. And what he did was he had this he had it cast into a mold. He took it to a Philadelphia silversmith. He had a silver reproduction made. He took it back to his home, Monticello, and instead of serving wine in that, which is what it was designed for, he served chocolate. The answer to most of my questions is
Chocolate.
Thank you very much. Good, excellent, good. That's what I do. So again, that's actually still at Monticello as well too. They usually keep on display, but it's there too. Ben Franklin, another famous American, actually sold chocolate in his shop in Philadelphia. He sold pens, pencils, Bibles, Richard's Almanac, the Philadelphia Gazette, but he sold chocolate. When he was actually procuring goods for the British troops during the French and Indian War, he actually issued chocolate for each one of the officers. He gave them to the officers, unfortunately, because back then they slightly discriminated by rank. But even continental soldiers in the American Revolution were often paid in blocks of chocolate because it was good for them. If it was available, it was substantial. They appreciated it, and they didn't have a lot of currency. Too.
That's funny you said that.